Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Be the Wolf. I'm here today with Alenka Kyslik. We're going to talk about the journey from overachieving and people pleasing. We're going to talk about creating health issues, like all of this stuff that sometimes comes up on our path to becoming the wolf, on our path to becoming who we truly are. There are these signs along the way that we tend to ignore because we're busy trying to be something that we're not made for. So we're going to dive into Alenka's story and share a little bit about that. So if you've been the overachiever, if you've been the people pleaser, if you've struggled with burning out, or maybe you had some chronic health stuff happen, definitely going to want to listen to this episode. So before we jump in, can you give us, Alenka, just a quick little snippet about what it is that you do?
Yeah. So my name's Alenka. I'm the founder of a company called Saha Collective. And Saha was based or built for people who basically have tried everything in conventional medicine and are sick of not having answers. And so we collect like incredible practitioners of all kinds, and we use matchmaking to connect you with them. So you are hopefully given back some semblance of control over your health and your life.
Beautiful. It's funny. You're like, your people have tried all the things with their health and they're like, nothing's working there. All the doctors are telling me I'm crazy. My people have tried all the things with their mental health and they're like, I'm doing everything right. I don't know why it's not working with their business strategies, with all of the things. So there's definitely some big synergy in the way we help people and who we help.
Yeah, it's true. Just doing everything because you're told to do it. It's like, unfortunately, if it worked that way, our lives would be a lot easier, I guess, as it would be nice, but that's not life. So here we are.
Yeah. And it really comes down to the whole like essence of being the wolf. It's if I just did everything you told me to do, I would be creating a life that was right for you.
Yeah.
And because I am my own unique person, it's not going to work because it's going to create things that aren't necessarily right for me. And I think that's one of the things that comes up is I think that we are the essence of who we are as peace, love, joy, and freedom. But what elicits those feelings for me is going to be different than what elicits those feelings for you. And so if I'm following your rule book on how to live a life of peace, love, joy, and freedom, then I'm going to end up doing all the things that you love, not necessarily the things that I love. And so in that, I would end up creating a life that feels like crap.
It's true. I think of people that I like look at and admire at the life that they've built and at the things that they've done to build that life and then what that life looks like on a day-to-day basis. Like I was thinking about it today. I'm like, I love the concept of growing and drying my own herbs and doing all of that. Would I be capable of it? No, I kill peace lilies and pothos plants. There's no way I could do that. But I really admire the people who are able to do that and live a really happy life and doing that that's full of peace and joy. But that's not what it looks like for me. My peace and joy is very chaotic compared to a lot of people, but it brings me the peace and joy that people are like, "Oh, I love what you're doing, and that's amazing." But then they look at my lifestyle, they're like, "I couldn't do that." So it very much depends on you, and it's really hard to figure out what that looks like because it's a lot easier to just follow what someone is telling you to do. It's a lot harder
Totally.
to listen to your own intuition, what your body's telling you, what your mind is telling you, and how it feels, because that's not how we're brought up, right? We're just brought up to go along with things because that's how we survive. And then at some point, it often stops working for us. And then that's when the real work begins. And that's when our life tends to feel like it's falling apart before it's put back together.
Yeah, especially if you're a person who, like you said, what brings you peace, love, and joy, and all of that feels a little chaotic to a lot of people. And I think those of us that were meant for things a little more outside the box, more outside the general collective, the journey can be a little bit more difficult because people look at you and they're like, you're fucking crazy. Like when I walked the Camino de Santiago, what are you going to walk 500 miles across Spain? What are you fucking crazy? I'm like, I've wanted to do this shit for 18 years and I was repressing it and holding it back. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it now because I got to live like everybody else, follow the rules.
Yeah.
And then like now I'm hiking to Everest Base Camp, and people are like, "Whoa, that's intense." I'm like, yeah, but that feels good to me. That's
Mhm.
fire walking, these things that I do on a semi-regular basis. It's like pushing this envelope that isn't right for
Yeah.
everybody.
It's not, and that's okay.
But exactly.
Yeah.
But it's like that thing. And so I spent my life trying to follow the rules, and you understand that
Oh,
story.
I know that very well. It made me miserable, it made me sick. I'm still figuring it out. I don't think but it's just something that it's a hard to me, it became a point where it's like you can resist it. You can continue to resist it and be super miserable doing it and literally be sick, or you can fundamentally change how you're approaching the world and approaching how you're building your life. And it's going to be scary. It's going to scare the shit out of you. Like I was having a conversation in the car with two of my close friends last night. And one of my friends is also going through a major life change. And we were like, what do you actually want? Not what does the person you're dating want? Not what does society want? What do you want? What brings you peace and joy? And he was like, I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, because you built your life around your romantic partners. And this is a great opportunity now for you to decide what your life looks like. And he was like, I don't know how to start. And I was like, you're going to go see your best friend for 3 days. This is a good place to start.
Yeah, it's very true. And you said something really important there is that people have trouble accessing what they really want, especially if you've been somebody who's sacrificed for others. But there's this thing I think what people think they want is something stable and consistent and easy. Because most people have been living in the like realm of a little bit higher frequency than that and lower frequency than that. But because there's this yo-yo, it's like I just want it to be even. I just want to feel like everything's going to be okay. And the truth is that's not what we actually want. Feeling stable isn't a life full of peace, love, joy, and freedom.
The hard thing is, I think that we hold on to things that we think give us stability that are very much an artificial sense of stability. But that's my
100%.
experience, right? Going down the corporate route in terms of work, we're all like, okay, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make this much money by this age and I'm going to hit this like title by this age and then I'll be able to have enough savings and retirement and that will be my stability. We all know that's not how, especially like I work in software, that world has gone through insane layoffs, right? And there's if you wanted to do that, the world is literally telling you for a lot of them, there's exceptions, sure, that's no longer possible. You have to find another way. And I think it's really hard because like we don't know that stability, I feel like has to come from within, where you're grounded in who you are and what you want. And no matter what happens, you're like, you know what? This sucks. I do not want to, like, let's say, lose a job, lose a partner, lose a home. It's awful. But does that change who I am fundamentally? No. Like, I am still the awesome person that I am. And that, I think, for me, took over a decade to figure out. Right.
Yeah, let's talk about that journey. All right, so let's go back, right? Like coming into the corporate world, what's the story? What's the belief if you do it? I mean, you mapped out the journey that is the standard journey. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get married by this point, have kids by this point, get this promotion by this point, XYZ, retire, be stable, like blah blah blah. And we know that like maybe our grandparents, that was the thing. Like my grandpa worked 40, 50 years in the same company. But by the time my mom was there, it started to get a little bit wobbly. And then, so that would be like, grandparents are they for me because I'm old, I'm Gen X, but grandparents were like Depression era. And then mom was like boomers. And then by the time Gen X came along, like that stability was starting to deplete and go away. And then millennials and Gen Z, like it's just not even a thing. So that I'm going to sacrifice and live this horrible job for 40 years, but at least I'll be safe. At least I'll have a retirement. And at least like that isn't an option. So the new option is to do it differently. But we all have that patterning still passed down through generations. Go to college, get the good blah. So what was it like for you when you entered into the corporate world?
Yeah. So for a little bit of context, my parents were immigrants, right? They left Soviet Union in 87, and I'm the eldest of three. So I say that to say is like my mom left engineering like in university 2 years in to run away. And so they did not complete higher education. My mom actually completed her bachelor's like years after I did, which I'm very proud of her for. But I was the first in my family to go to college and to get a corporate job. And then my parents did what they did, like running away literally in the middle of the night for our lives, right? And so there was a lot of pressure to perform, to achieve. Granted, I was doing work that I didn't know existed, right, in college. Like, I didn't know that this type of work was possible. And it was always really exciting to be like, oh, I'm traveling the world because I was working with airlines. I'm doing all of these things that like I didn't think were ever possible. Like when I grew up, I very much thought that the extent of, I knew I was smart, but I was like, whatever. Maybe that had something to do with the very religious town I grew up in. I thought my life was going to be get married, have kids, be a receptionist. And
Mm.
then I went to university and I was like, oh no, there's actually options here. There's a lot more than I realized. And I say this to say that the corporate world then meant I had to do everything to achieve in it because I had been given this opportunity that I didn't think was possible, that my parents didn't even know was possible. I had to really push myself to my absolute limits because you can't give up an opportunity like that. I moved to Montreal. My company moved me down to LA. These are things that were not even fathomable for my family. So it became very important that I pushed myself to continue achieving. The problem was it became more about keeping the job and having the job and trying to do my best to achieve at it, that it didn't matter how toxic the work environment was. It didn't matter how I was being treated by my bosses, which I have learned through the grapevine later on, have come to regret what happened. I had to push through. And what it culminated in was 7 years of working at this one company. I mean, you can look up which one that is in LinkedIn, but it culminated in my body literally shutting down. Like
Yeah.
I could not get up to eat, to like walk the dog was the only like force that got me anywhere. I remember once I had a friend who was visiting and she was like really worried. This was planned like way in advance and she was worried. She comes in and she just cleans the counter. And I started crying because I did not have the capacity to do that. And it really scared me because I was an overachieving adult. The fact that you cannot do that, I could barely write a couple of emails a day. Like my brain and body literally just shut down. It's really scary to get to that point.
Yeah. Let's go back in time to some of it because there's this you were doing like they were moving you to different cities and all of this. Did you feel like you could say no?
I didn't want to say no. I knew that this was a really incredible opportunity. And at the time, I already wasn't happy doing the work when I was in. And so I was like, you know what? Maybe at least there won't be winters.
Now, what did it feel like if you had squandered the opportunity? What going back to that time when it was like, "Oh, I can't let go of this opportunity." What would it feel like the consequences would be? Like, we know that in hindsight, you could be like, "Oh, the consequences would be this," but at the time, it feels bigger than what's actually the truth. What did it feel like for you
Yeah.
that the consequences would be if you squandered the opportunity?
I've honestly never thought about it because I actually had to, and this sounds a little privileged to say, but get another job offer in order to negotiate the salary that would make a living wage because they were trying to give me something that was going to get me like, I wouldn't have even be able to afford rent. And so I did that. And so I would have taken that job probably. It would have limited my options in terms of my potential growth and the things that I could have done. It would have meant that this opportunity to travel the world that I had for a couple of years at that point would be non-existent, and my life would be a lot smaller, which at the time was terrifying. Now I have mixed feelings about that, but at the time it was scary.
And so if you wouldn't have had the opportunity to grow and expand, your parents came here because they were looking for the opportunity to grow and expand. Yeah?
Yeah.
Essentially?
Essentially, yeah, obviously, if you know anything about the Soviet Union, there was other concerns, but yes.
Yeah. Safety, growth, and expansion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so would you say that became the rules that you needed to live by?
Because the opportunities in the States are a lot bigger. And so that when we go back to what we're talking about in terms of stability, that gives you a feeling of safety when you're like, oh, I can make more money, I can have that. And so that's where I feel like that safety came from. Whereas I knew there were going to be more limitations on me if I had stayed in Canada. It's just a smaller country. Economy's a lot smaller. So I felt that it's one of those things that you're pushed, especially as an immigrant child, to find that safe, whatever that is, if it's in terms of dollars, if it's in terms of jobs, it's just finding that feeling of safety and stability, which, like we said, isn't actually often the case, but we try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's when it comes to immigrant families, particularly, because I've seen it hundreds of times, and a lot of my guests have been children of immigrants. And there is this, we come here for safety, and the opportunities create the safety. And so the kids feel this pressure to really take advantage of that. The parents will take advantage of it to one degree, and they've definitely gotten to a higher level of safety than where they came from. But that mindset of this is how we have to move, everything becomes about that safety and stability, gets ingrained, I think, a lot into the kids. And so whatever that thing, whatever that mindset is that's demonstrated about how we get the safety and stability is the thing that becomes the thing that we fight against. My family, it was buy the cheapest thing, go to 3 different stores to get the cheapest thing, don't hang on to your money no matter what. Like, it wasn't as much about expanding and growing in that way. It was about clutching and holding on to what you had. If you had it, don't let it go. And it was demonstrated in many ways with money, with things, like all kinds of things. But there is that point, as you said, and it gets out of balance and your body starts to shut down. What were the early signs that you ignored?
Honestly, they happened
With
5 years earlier that I didn't realize it at the time. So initially it happened in 2016 when I first moved here. I felt like out of body. Like I couldn't like really control. Like I remember there's this one experience where I went to like step on the brake at a red light. To be clear, I don't have any accidents on my record. I am a very defensive driver. I say this to say that like I couldn't register the distance between the like line and how much I needed to press on the brake at what time. I was so disconnected from my body that those two things were just not computing. And I remember being like half the car over the line in a way that there was absolutely no reason for, but I just could not figure out how to be connected with it. I remember not being able to, as much as I tried, no matter what I tried, pay attention in meetings. And to be clear, most of my life was meetings. So that's important. I couldn't, and it's not that I was like thinking about other things. I couldn't absorb the words that were coming out of people's mouths over the phone. It felt very like I was a zombie in a lot of ways. I was just doing what I was trying to do. And that was the first. And then like things got a little bit better for a few years and then they got a lot worse.
And when you say it got a little better, how did it get a little better? Was there something that you started doing differently?
I think so that all happened when I had just moved. And so to be like what it looked like in the moment was like I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor. I didn't have anything set up. And I think the stress of moving to a new country, a new city where I knew 3 people was really without a partner. I want to be clear, when you have a partner, it's a lot different. And all of the execs who did the same thing, that they had wives, and they were like, why is it so hard for you? It's like, you underestimate how much work your wife does for you. But it became very hard because it was so isolating, and it's just really exhausting to be in a place where you don't know anyone, like, you don't have the ability, and I had already done this once before. You don't have the ability to lean on people in person. I had
What?
community virtually, but it's not the same.
Were you born here or
I
in
was
the
born on the West Coast of Canada, and then I spent 5 years in Montreal before coming to LA.
And so when your parents left the Soviet Union, were you born yet or
No,
pregnant?
I was born in Canada.
Okay. One of the things, like, what you're talking about is this, like, you're moving to a new place, new country, new, like, isolation, like, all of this thing. And some of these stressors are passed down generation to generation. And when you immigrate, because you're trying to have things be more safe, there's a lot of, in some of my clients, we undo genetic, like, stressors that repeat in their kids without even ever having. It's very obvious if a parent's pregnant with you, you get that same, but it's an energetic frequency. And it sounds like a very similar energetic frequency of what it's like to immigrate in under those circumstances where it's just really hard, really overwhelming because you just don't feel safe. And obviously there's the general stuff of that, but and you didn't have a partner, so that's also part of it. But there might be an energetic unhealed thread that was passed down through the generation as well.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. My mom was born in 66. And in 68, there was what was called the Prague Spring. It was a time where it was like the first time that people could somewhat travel out of the Soviet Union, like they were allowed to travel. There was a mass exodus. There's a lot of people in that generation who actually left the Soviet Union. But all to say is that my grandparents were always very politically active. And so I'm sure there was some stressors involved in my grandma's pregnancy. Because, yeah, they were like, I was born the day of the Velvet Revolution. Like my grandma and my uncle were marching, and they forgot that I was being born because they were out.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, like with women, that part of the egg that became you was actually in your grandmother's body in the time of pregnancy. And so with men, that stuff gets passed down, but it gets passed down a little bit deeper with women. Yeah, it's just interesting. That experience is definitely feels very similar to the immigrant who's fleeing for safety. So it got worse and then it got better. Was there a particular thing that you can attribute to it getting a little bit better before it got really bad?
We ended up shutting down a contract with a client because it was a very funny story, but basically they were a major Chinese telecom, and they were going to acquire 51% of the company that I was working for. And the US government called us and said that we had to shut it down. So yeah, when I no longer had to be flying to Beijing and on midnight phone calls, I think that helped a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And then so it started up again. What was, like, as you look back, what was the beginning, the trigger of it starting up again?
It was, and my boss said this verbatim. He said, I could give you a green card, but I know that you're going to leave the company if I do that. And I think something in me fundamentally broke because that had been a carrot on a stick in terms of stability and safety for at that point, like 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that point when, and I know for me, it's like I felt like I was beholden. My safety, my stability, my everything was dependent on, like, my mom. I grew up with a lot of trauma and all of this stuff, and it was a terrible situation. But as a 4-year-old, it was the better choice to stay with her than to try to make it on my own.
Yeah.
And so what that did to my nervous system is it made me feel trapped, like I was literally a slave. And so in that place, and I know a lot of people feel this way, whether it's like the job or it's a partner or it's even a workout routine or sticking to the plan, whatever it is, like, this is the thing that's going to give me safety and stability. So now I've become a slave to it. And that, like, your story is very obvious. You are my slave if you want this, which I'm going to keep holding out of your reach.
Yeah. It was really awful. And then I was given two of the most, I don't want to say needy, but that was effectively what it was, clients in the industry, bigger clients that you've definitely heard of. They win all sorts of awards all the time because they are really good at what they do. And I told my bosses, I said, if you give me these, I will burn out. One of these has burnt out someone who's more senior than me. Two of them will definitely burn me out. And so I knew it was going to happen before it was going to happen, but I didn't know what it was going to look like.
Yeah. When you knew that it was going to happen, like, we can look back, we see it as a choice point, right? It's, I know this is going to happen. Did it feel like you had any control?
No, absolutely not. It's one of those things your boss tells you this is your project. I will say Gen Z is great at this though. But as a millennial, I don't know how to say no in those contexts. I don't know how to set those boundaries because I never thought that I had the option.
Yeah.
But we're learning better from our younger peers that there is a way to say no. But yeah, and fathoming the idea of telling my boss that I will not take on a client, I can't even comprehend that even now.
Yeah. And that's a huge thing because as we learn to be more and more the wolf, it's about doing what's right for us in all circumstances, in all ways, and not letting fear drive the decisions. But, and I know so many people felt like this because I felt like this in every job that I had. I was like, yeah, whatever, I'll work fucking 7, 8 shifts a week, whatever it takes, whatever will make you happy or keep you like, it just, it felt like I had no control, felt like I couldn't say no, felt like I wanted to do it. Yes, I want to do this. For me, that's what it felt like. But in hindsight, I can see that what I did is I gaslit myself to thinking I wanted it so that it would justify me sacrificing myself.
Yeah. Which is really scary
Mm.
to say out loud because I think what that does though is it allows you to have some sense of ownership, which is powerful. When you say when things are happening at you, then there's or to you, then it makes you helpless and that's scary. But once you're like, "Oh no, I could have done something about that. I chose not to." And like I'm going to give myself grace for the position I was in at the time. But now if I were to be in the same position, what would I do differently? Gives you control over that situation, even if the outcome is still the same.
Yeah. And the thing that's so interesting too, especially like anybody who grew up not feeling safe, like 100%, a lot, like I had a lot of trauma and there's all that. But the thing is, my mom was inconsistent. If I take all the physical abuse and all the gaslighting and all the emotional, but like, what is it that makes a child feel not safe? A parent who has anxiety, a parent who feels depressed, a parent who is inconsistent, a parent who is unpredictable. So all of those things, even if you have a really great parent, but they have one of those things, as a little one, you don't feel safe because it's unpredictable. So there's no steady flow of how things work. And so then it becomes the quest of trying to create this stability, this steadiness that you didn't get because or a parent who is dissociated and maybe not out of their body, like any of those things which are not connected to their emotional self. And if we start to really look at it, that's most people. And so most people aren't growing up feeling safe and secure, not 100%. And so in order, I always say you have to get to the higher level things you want in your life, you have to go through neutral first. It's like driving a stick shift for those old enough to even know what that is. But if you don't go through neutral, you grind the gears and you can't go from the low gear to the high gear. And so that stability place is that place where a lot of people who grew up not feeling safe, it's like that's the goal, is to get to that stability place, but you don't want to stay there. What you really want is beyond that. It's that place that feels like peace and freedom and joy and love, and it feels like expansive, not okay, now I have this and now I have to hold on to it. And so now I have the job and the thing, and he's holding the green card there. And okay, it's stable. But what does it take if you've ever stood in a headstand or stood on one leg? It's to try and stay stable takes a lot of effort to stay in that one place because we're meant to flow. There's meant to be like movement. But so often, not feeling safe or stable growing up, whatever context it looks like on whatever scale, it's like we strive for that safety, but that doesn't create the life that we want.
Yeah, which is really hard because then I think this alludes to our pre-recording conversation is that what that has then forced me to do is be more fluid and be more
Yeah.
okay with things not being as predictable and not like my current situation. I don't know where I'm going to live in 6 months. That's terrifying, but it's also very freeing. And I feel like if I lean more into the freeing aspect than the terrifying aspect, that's where the peace and the joy comes.
Yeah. And you make a really good point because it's if I start to think about the fear and the terrifying thing, like what are my choices? Then I start making choices like staying in a job that's destroying me. I start saying yes to clients I know are going to burn me out. And this is in doesn't matter. The patterns still need to be cleared. Like just because you're working for yourself now and you're an entrepreneur now, it's are you going to still say yes to the clients who are going to burn you out? That's the practice. And how do we move forward? I know for me and for a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with, it's like the path of entrepreneurship is really the path of self actualization because you have to face all this stuff in order for your business to work.
Yeah.
And therefore, yeah.
I had a friend say this to me back when this was just an idea. And she said, entrepreneurship is the fastest way to self growth. There is no other faster way.
Yeah, it's true because all those patterns that you picked up that were carried either through the generations or that you picked up along the way have to be dissolved in order for your business to there are lots of entrepreneurs who have very successful businesses that feel like shit.
Yeah. And I think for me,
So,
what that has meant is looking at them because I've talked to them, I've met them. I have a friend who sold 2 businesses and like by all standards is a success and he is miserable as fuck in his current role. He chose not to accept the CEO position. He's doing like a different position and I need to leave. I need to be out of here. I need to do something that brings me more joy. And for me, what that means is looking at those people and those decisions. And I do the same thing with relationships. And I look at people and the decision they make and where they're at. Would I be happy there? How did they get there? What did that look like? And then I try to figure out how can I avoid those things? How can I? And for me, there's been very specific, tangible things in how I'm conducting my business.
tell me more.
Right now, I had a friend last night. We were talking about this, and it comes up all the time. People are like, "Why aren't you looking for investment?" I was like, I can walk you through how investment cycles work and how the traditional like raising capital and venture capital works. For all intents and purposes, what I have seen is that then you have an influx of cash, you grow the business at all costs, and then at some point you need to ask for more cash. And that's all you're doing. It's this hamster wheel of growing and asking for more money. And what that often means is that it's growing at all costs, meaning at the integrity of the business of the thing that you're trying to build. You're there primarily to make money. And I'm not saying that's not a motivator, but what I'm saying is if that comes at the expense of the quality of the ethos of what you're trying to build, for me, it's not worth it.
And just what you described, the pattern that you described is exactly what you were doing in your corporate world. And we tend to notice, and this is the challenge, right? It's like I talk about this thing about an invisible cage. It's like this world we're living in that's like our operating structure and how we see things and how we do things. And you literally described the life you were living, but through the lens of getting capital for your business. And so, is it possible that there's a way to get capital, but you have to access the way to do it that's right for you? You have to get outside of that lens of thinking to be able to access the new way.
Yeah, and so for me, it's about aligning myself with people who are aligned with what and why and how I'm building.
Yeah.
Because I've spoken with a lot of people at this point, and there are ways to do it where it's not the like copy paste. And so I've come up with those solutions, and I very much know what I want if that was what I was focusing on. But I also don't want to spend 6 months out of the year chasing money. I'd rather spend 6 months of the year building community and building the business. And I think to me, that feels way more aligned than begging on my knees, not to mention the fact that less than 2% goes to women and 50% of that is Series A. And then most of it's all AI primary companies. So like I'm dealing with a pool of 0.2% maybe. And I was like, that just feels like a waste of time. So let me find a better way.
Well,
And
yeah.
it means a lot more creativity.
And that's such a big thing, the creativity. And you can't access true creativity unless you're in a higher level emotion, unless you're in that peace, love, joy, freedom, or at worst, at neutral. Like your brain literally, when you're in a contractive emotion, fear, overwhelm, all of those things, your brain can only recycle what it's already done. It can't actually blow into anything new. So I love that you're moving more, it sounds like you're moving slower and more intentionally
It's
and bringing in that creativity.
it's slower, more intentional, and I think what's been really beautiful about it is because of how I didn't decide to go full time until 4 months ago now. I was working corporate while I was building, and I've been building for 2.5 years. What it's meant, though, is that during this time, I've built some really incredible relationships with some incredible people, and that is now translating into a way to move forward that is super aligned, that allows me to build like one of the primary things for me is I want my practitioners to have booked out all of the appointments they have available on the platform. That's my goal is to like, I don't know how soon we're going to get there. My goal is soon, but like my goal is to really focus on that. And the reason for that is I think it's important for people who are incredible at what they do to be able to bring that to the world, right?
Yeah.
That's not how my competitors function at all. But for me, this is the most aligned way. And then what's been really interesting is the more I calculate the numbers, it's the only way. It's been a really beautiful shift.
Yeah. And the thing that is really remarkable and beautiful about this, if we think about if the goal, whatever it is, like obviously we want to make money and do all of that. But if the goal is that we have a life that feels like peace, love, joy, and freedom, and you win and you're chasing money and you build this big company and it goes really big and you make a lot of money and you end up like your friend who's miserable. And so maybe that takes you 10 years to do that or whatever,
Yeah,
5 years.
10 years is pretty standard. Yeah.
So it takes you 10 years to do that. So 10 years you already did the 10 years of that shit in corporate. So you're like, now I'm going to try this, but you're doing it in a different way, which means there's a chance of a different result. And so in theory, it may look like it's taking longer, but in the long run, maybe it takes you 10 years, maybe it takes you 12 years, but to get to that point where it's making like a ton of money.
Sure.
But you're holding true to what's right for you. So you're maintaining that level of peace, love, joy, freedom, and the creativity and all of that. And maybe it takes you, let's just say 12 years. The person who did it in 10 but is miserable now has to start from scratch. And so maybe it takes them 10 years, maybe, or 12 years to build the business that they love. And so you just saved yourself 10 years. And so people think about this time, oh, there's not enough time. If I'm like being more intentional and maybe I'm moving a little bit slower, what you're actually doing in the long run is collapsing time because you want to build something you love and you want to create a life that feels good.
Yeah.
And if you want both, if you just want the money, then whatever, do the other thing. But if you want both, like maybe it looks slower, but in the long run, it will collapse time because and most people never even get to the point where they're building a life that feels good.
Yeah, I think the thing that is really hard for me right now, this is what I'm going through a lot of shifts in, is I know what feels good and this feels good. What I'm building feels good. The uncertainty that's coming along with it is really scary. Like I texted someone the other day. I'm like, I'm equally terrified and absolutely aligned and thrilled. Like those two things are like, meaning like I don't have the same stability as if I was to accept a corporate job somewhere in like from a financial sense. I don't
Yeah.
have that right now. I don't have an income yet because I'm still building.
Yeah.
But every single day I come in and I'm excited to do what I'm doing. I feel aligned in the people I'm speaking with, in this, what I'm surrounded by. I have never felt this in my entire career, like ever. And that is, when someone's, oh, are you going to start working corporate? My stomach flips. I just can't.
Yeah. I love her. Again, your business is about connecting people with the right health practitioners that can actually help them in a way that's holistic and aligned.
It's the goal is to look at who you are as a whole person, not who you were yesterday, not who you're going to be, but who are you today and right now? And then how can we help you where you're at? Because it's so infuriating waiting for that appointment for that specialist or the provider of whatever type for months that you like spend a long time trying to find if they were the right one. You get in the room and then all of a sudden you feel like you have to justify your experiences. You have to explain something. You feel like you're being dismissed. They don't really understand what you're going through. And then if you're lucky, maybe they'll give you something that's helpful, but oftentimes they don't.
Yeah.
Or my favorite, oh, it's just stress. It is what it is. I hate
It's like, I've moved here too. I don't understand why it's so hard for you.
I don't know. I'm like, why is this so hard for you? And you're like, have you not heard anything I've said? And so my goal is to give people the absolute opposite experience because I have had those experiences with providers where you
Yeah.
get in the room and you're like, oh, I don't have to justify the fact that I can't seem to fix this problem. And I've tried all of these things. You just get it. And you're going to work with me. You're going to be patient with me. You're not going to make me feel like I'm less for not doing as well as somebody else. And I think that is such a rare feeling that it is something to strive for. It is something to upend your life for, which is what I'm doing. Like I want to upend my life for this so that I can provide that sense to other people. Like,
And yeah, and the beautiful thing is as you move through this, as you build this company, because this is a company based on in many ways your own experiences
yeah,
and solving that problem. So there is this healing. One of the things that's just beautiful about the Be the Wolf way is if when you're moving in the way that's aligned, you're ending up serving and solving problems for people who are just behind you on the journey. And in that process, though, it helps you keep moving on the journey and healing more of the stuff that was imprinted at childhood or imprinted later in life or whatever it is. Just the process becomes a healing journey and the building of the business becomes a healing journey and becomes that deeper and more expansive self-actualization. It's just beautiful.
thank you. I'm equal parts thrilled and terrified, to be honest.
And I think the terrified, it, when you say it, right? Because I'm super sensitive to frequency, and I know the frequency of fear, and I know all those below neutral emotions and the frequencies of what they are. When you talk about being terrified, it's not. It's a really clean and clear frequency. It's
Mm,
just the unknown for you is my guess. So it's
yeah,
because it's unfamiliar. It feels terrifying, but the frequency of it is really expansive. And so even if you're making decisions from that particular brand of terrified, it's going to create expansive results.
thank you. Oh, I appreciate it. I think for me, the word terrified, it doesn't always have negative
Yeah.
connotations. Like for me, it's very much like I don't know what I'm doing and I'm figuring it out as I go.
Yeah.
And I think we can give the illusion of knowing what we're doing, like we thought adults did as kids.
Yeah.
But we're still all figuring it out, and that's okay. And it's just, to your point, it's expansive. Like, it allows for flexibility in ways that if we decide this is the way it is, we'll never have access to. So how can I come into it being like, I don't know, and allowing for things to happen in my orbit and around me, and then choosing what I pick to be a part of my life.
Yeah, beautiful. How do people get connected with what you're building?
Yeah, you can look us up at sahacollective.com. You can find us on Instagram. When I say us, it's me at Saha, SAHA dot collective. And then I think you'll be including the LinkedIn
Yeah.
as well. Yeah, and feel free to email me directly at info@sahacollective.com. I'm really excited. I always look for feedback and thoughts. I think this is a combined effort. It is not. I am just the vehicle that's making it to come to life, but I love working with people.
Yeah. Beautiful. And of course, the last question I want to ask is for you, what does it mean to be the wolf?
I think being the wolf right now is embracing the unknown and choosing to be excited about what the adventure holds, and to take the moments, the little glimmers, as one of my friends puts it, and really appreciate them. The smell of jasmine on my walk this morning is just, let me just enjoy that, because I think we often forget that if we just push through, but if we allow ourselves to be present along the journey, we can really enjoy those little moments.
Yeah, beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your experiences and what you're up to because it's good stuff. And remember, everybody, when you operate from the truth of who you are, humanity evolves. We'll see you all next time on Be the Wolf. Bye, everyone.